About 28 years ago, I found myself sitting in an addictions treatment center in Tampa, Florida, back when OHIP paid for such a thing. I weighed 103 pounds, and I'd just given birth to my third baby 3 months before. I grew up in a highly dysfunctional middle-class family. My dad was in the Air Force, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was emotionally not present, and eventually he wasn't physically present either. My mother felt trapped and betrayed by her life choices and made sure I was aware almost daily that she'd wished she'd never had children. She was verbally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically abusive. School was a nightmare. In the 60s, there was no such thing as dyslexia or ADHD, both of which I had in spades. Only lazy, disrespectful children who didn't try hard enough. I was really tall, I was skinny, I was weird, and I was both socially and physically awkward. So if you're wondering, yeah, I did get bullied a lot. At school and at home. Both my parents were fat phobic. To them, the ultimate sign of intellectual, social, and physical weakness was being overweight. Social liberals, my parents taught me that I needed to treat all people equally, unless you were fat. So untrue, right? What a lie. But forever in my mind was locked in the lie that weight was not about health or wellness. It was a measure of your worth. I was slow, I was stupid, I was unlovable, I was ugly, I was ungainly, and a complete disappointment to my parents and teachers, but man, I was not fat. In my teens, I figured out that appearances made the world go round. If I was beautiful, I was worthy of love, and beautiful meant skinny, and I worked really hard at both. I was a beauty queen, and then I moved to Toronto to be a model. But God was looking after me, because I figured out pretty soon that modeling was probably not the best place for a person with zero self-esteem, desperate for validation and love. Completely uncertain of what to do next, I made the brilliant decision at 20 to marry my high school boyfriend. It lasted a year and 11 months. But I did meet my wonderful husband of 35 years, so it wasn't all bad. I left my first husband, went on the pill, and gained 20 pounds really fast, and I freaked out. I went to my doctor, and he said, "It cannot possibly be my wonderful little hormone pill I gave you. You're just eating too much." So I stopped taking the pill, and I stopped eating. Enter the three-headed dragon of the eating disorder. I was completely overtaken with what I could and could not eat. I was constantly calculating calories in and calories out, establishing tiny little food rewards for myself if I was good. Running up and down stairs, calculating how many calories I could burn when I chewed or had sex, trying to figure out how I could exercise in my sleep. The brain crazies, man, a food obsession, they never stop day or night. And I love starving. It made me feel superhuman. I used 2 parts of the 4-part supermodel diet, existing on the coffee and cigarettes, but denying myself the cocaine and champagne. The freakiest part, people would stop me and say how fantastic I looked. They'd ask for diet tips. What I was doing was basically committing slow suicide. Eventually, the desire to have a baby and to please my husband and family, I started to eat again. I brought my weight up to a non-scary place. But now I only ever ate those reward foods. So long as I didn't look sick, no one thought I was sick. My second acute phase was more intense. My life had basically fallen apart. My husband had lost his job. Our relationship was in tatters. I was pregnant again and so desperate. And then, bam, I started to restrict and restrict and restrict. This time it wasn't about weight. It was all about worth. I got smaller and smaller. My baby was okay. She was 7'7" when she was born, but I'd lost 20 pounds. Things just got worse. I needed to see all my bones all the time. I was constantly feeling for them. Again, the brain crazies, on and off the scale 20 times a day. Eventually, I got down to my one food. You see, every good anorexic has one food they limit, but they let themselves have. For me, it was 16, count them, 16, not 15, not 14, 16 red jujubes. Don't get in the way of me and my jujubes. People think that anorexics are afraid of food, but that's not it. We're afraid of the consequences of food. The aim is really to get so skinny that you can eat anything you want and there's no fat consequence. The only problem is that once the disease takes hold of your mental picture, so skinny or the designated number on the scale keeps moving because it's unattainable. My sister, thinking that my husband needed addictions treatment, referred us to the center in Tampa. And God was looking after me again because my husband and I had to go to the intake session together. The counselor took one look at me and started intake for me. I refused, sending my husband down first, but I followed 2 weeks later. The center pulled me off all refined sugar and refined carbs, realizing that that was my drug of choice. I followed the 12 steps of OA, and because I was a good girl, I did everything I was asked as perfectly as I could. I went through all the steps at least twice. I had a food sponsor, a step sponsor, and then became a food sponsor and a step sponsor. I found my faith through the program, and my life was healing, but slowly over time, I lost my abstinence, falling back into my sugar habit. I tricked myself into living with my disorder this way. I said, my disorder is like diabetes. I just have to learn how to live with it. So long as I stayed in my head, so long as I never even thought about what I looked like or how I ate, I could stop those brain crazies from going on. The calculations. I'll eat 3 cookies, and then next week I'll only eat 2 cookies, but I ate 6 cookies, so I may as well eat the whole bag, and tomorrow I won't eat anything. The brain crazies. As soon as I let my focus to my body, that demon came back. So I just binged on whatever I wanted, which was sugar and carbs. And eventually my age caught up with me, and I started to gain a lot of weight. I mean, a lot of weight. Like 250 pounds. I ignored it. Until eventually, probably because of years of nutritional stress, I was riddled with arthritis and joint pain, and I was almost unable to walk. I had to start using scooters when I went shopping because of the weight of my joints was so severe I would be in agony after a few steps. I realized that I had to do something if I wanted to have any kind of quality of life in my senior years, but I was terrified because that meant waking that sleeping dragon, and I was sure this time he's going to kill me, for sure. Over the years, my faith had gotten stronger and stronger. I led Bible studies and small groups. I'm a worship leader, and I'm becoming a pastor. I had counseled many, many people who were struggling with addictions and relationship issues. I told so many people to let go and let God. I prayed with them, talked with them, celebrated with them, and all the time I was just barely holding off this terrible demon that was always just around the corner waiting to devour me, because I had never really given up my disease for healing to the Lord. I'd only ever asked him for the strength to live with it, which he did, because that's all I asked him to do. Probably because deep down I thought I didn't deserve to be healed. You do, you did, I didn't. So here I am, almost crippled. I have to face my dragon, and I'm convinced he's going to win. But this time I do something different. This time I ask for prayer. I was at a prayer gathering and asked for prayer for myself, something I never do. Pride, you know. I asked for them to pray for me and for me to be delivered from this terrible burden that was eating me up inside. And you know what? It was. I felt it go. Like a giant sword had just lopped off all 3 heads of that dragon I'd been carrying around inside of me for so many years. I didn't have to live with it. I could be free from it. Amen. I immediately started a healthy eating program. So no more sugar, no more carbs. And I haven't had one bout of those brain crazies. Not one. Amen. I have been completely healed and restored through the power of Jesus in my life. Completely. I don't know how much I weigh now, and I don't care. I had to trust that if I finally let go, Jesus would heal me. Because eating disorders are a disease caused by a broken heart. Okay? And only God can restore a human heart. And he did. Amen. Thank you. Praise Jesus.